Well, good morning. Jim Sunderwirth here from my swing here at the house. So good to be with you again today. Well, yesterday we talked about actually Psalms 34. It said, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth." And we came off of that because we were talking about, Korah and Dothan and Abiram who came against Moses and Aaron, and because they were jealous and they were prideful and all that, and how that they were cursed and lost their lives over it, and those that followed him. But then we talked about the fact that God's blessing still rested upon their kids and their ancestors, because Korah, the children of Korah, became a great asset to the children of Israel, to David, and to the children as they were songsters, and they were the keeper of the doors, and also they were good soldiers. Anyway, so we thought that was an amazing thing to point out. But here's the thing. We got to go on now. We're going to go on to chapter 17, where God told Moses, he said, "I'm not going to mess with this anymore. I don't want anybody rebelling against my authority and who I have chosen to do what I am supposed to do." And they really were trying to come against Aaron, in a sense, because he was the high priest and they were Levites, and they thought that why couldn't they be high priests? They were just as sharp as Aaron. So anyway, so here we go in chapter 17, that starting at the first verse. It says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and get from them a rod from each father's house, all the leaders according to their father's houses, 12 rods. Write each man's name on the rod, and you'll write Aaron's name on the rod of the Levi." Okay, so what they were going to do, they were going to take these rods. Each man carried with them a staff, a rod. We've talked about this in the past. "For there shall be one rod for the head of each of the father's house. Then you shall place them in the tabernacle of meeting before the testimony, where I will meet with you. And it shall be that the rod of the man whom I choose will blossom." Okay, so he said, "I'm going to settle this issue from now on. I want every tribe to bring a rod of one of the men, the leaders of that tribe, and put their name on it. And I want them to take this rod and bring it in the tabernacle before the altar and leave it there overnight." Okay, so the thing is, the staff, the rod, is very important. Remember, it speaks of authority. And it speaks of authority and protection and strength. So the rod, when a man would carry the rod, when he was a shepherd, he would carry the rod. Now we talked about this, that Moses had a rod. Remember, we stood before God, and God told him to say, "Take that rod that you have." Everything, a lot of times, we talked about it before, but I want to remind you, a lot of times they would write things, or they would put notches on the rod that would remind them of events of their life. And out there taking care of the sheep, if they ran into some kind of a bear or a lion, or one fell into a ditch or this or that, they would notch it in. And then they would also notch in about their marriage and their children and different events. And the rod basically would tell of their life. Now these rods that these men had, they put their name on it. Now I don't know how many of those, they might have just gotten a rod from anywhere. They may not have been shepherd's rods, but at least the rod did speak of strength, protection. It talked about authority. When you have a rod in your hand, you carry a little bit of authority with it. Okay, so what they were doing was they take this rod from every one of these leaders, and they put him in the tabernacle overnight. And remember, a rod is something that's taken off of something that's alive. The rod was completely dead. It was dry. You could mark on it, but it was dead. It was dry. And so here they put it in the tabernacle. Well, the next morning when they got up, and the reason it says, "Thus will I rid myself," this is what God said, "rid myself of the complaints of the children of Israel, which they make against you." So what are we going to do? I'm going to choose one, and we're going to see what happens. And when the next day, and so Moses spoke to the children of Israel, and each of their leaders gave them a rod apiece, and the leaders according to their father's houses 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron was among those rods. And they placed it before the Lord, and they waited till the next day. Well, okay, God, we all have our lives, and we all have those things that mean something to us. But you know something? The Bible says we were dead in trespasses and sins, and all those things were dead to the use of God. So well, I'll talk to you tomorrow about it. We'll set this thing up. We'll see what happens when we go back into that tabernacle, pick up those rods.